So thank you everyone for being here. I'm Trisha Burke and I'm from Communication Studies. And we also have Dr. Sandra Rankin from the Counseling Center. Yeah, thanks. Say hi. And then Mariana and Tyler, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, hi, we are the WellCat DIAs. We are in the physical therapy department. We're students. And yeah, we just love this opportunity to be able to talk about wellness and this topic of burnout.
And it's nice to meet all of you. We look forward to giving you some tips. Please ask questions. It'll help us for the next time we present.
Yeah, so this is their first time doing one of these events, and we're really excited about all the content today. Okay, so first, real quick about WellCats, since we're sponsoring this presentation. WellCats is the Texas State Employee Wellness Program. I'm sure most of you know that already. It's free for all benefits eligible employees, and we have lots of different services, including things like these WellCats Education Series events, but also exercise classes, cooking classes, nutrition consultations, behavior change coaching, even like afternoon breaks where you can just do a stretch at your desk. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So there's all different kinds of things, and I encourage you all to check out the WellCats material. So for us today, we're going to address burnout and healthy habits for a productive workplace. And I was joking with Tyler and Mariana when we were putting the presentation together that I'm not sure if I'm the best person to be giving this advice, because I don't always feel like I follow my own advice, but nevertheless, I think that burnout is an important thing to address. It's something that we all experience probably at some point at work, and we want to make sure that you all have tools to address it. So that's where I'm going to turn it over here, and we'll learn a little bit more about stress, because this is what leads to burnout.
Yes, we wanted to talk about stress, and we wanted to do a poll just to see how everyone who is here, how they feel about stress. So go ahead and look at this poll and answer about how you feel. How would you characterize your current stress level? We'll answer it too. Okay, so just think about your stress levels right now. And once everyone's answered, we'll see the results. And thinking about the things that stress you out, you can answer in the chat or you can unmute. Just name some of the things that are causing you stress right now. So we see that there is
go ahead. I was just going to say, I just shared the results so you guys can all see.
Yeah. So, okay, there's some of you that are not stressed. That's great. There's a lot of us that are moderately stressed and fairly stressed. And it looks like some of the things that are causing stress are school starting soon for kids, kids moving back in and having a house painted.
Oof, that's a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of these things are like something in your life that's changing, something that you have to plan for. A lot of these things have to do when other people depend on you, it looks like. So that sounds pretty stressful. But one of the things that we were talking about as we were preparing for this presentation is that sometimes there's good things that happen that still causes stress. And we tend to look at stress as a negative thing, that it's only when bad things happen that we feel stress. But there's good things that can cause stress, just like school starting for kids. That's good for kids to be back in school. Or having your house painted, that's something really good because it keeps your house looking nice. Your kids moving back in, sometimes it's nice to have your kids moving back in, but it can be stressful. Or even when you start a new job, it can be stressful. Or when you have a new relationship or you're having kids, all of these things can add up because it's a change in your life, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just about looking at how those things affect you in the long term when you don't do anything about it. So as we have here on the slide, it says that stress is an intrinsic motivator. So when you feel that stress building up, it should be a motivation for you to do something about it. So you feel that stress building up that your kids are coming back. So what do you do to prepare? You do things to help make that transition more smoothly, or you make sure that the house is painted before they come so that you don't have to worry about that when they get there. Or your kids are going back to school, so you do all the back to school prep so that when they go back to school, it's not as stressful. And it's just that motivation to get things rolling and get things going. But when you let that stress accumulate, it starts to show in your physical and emotional, mental health as well. We can see here in this box that when it starts affecting your physical health, that's when you start to get a headache, or sometimes you can get a rash or something irritating on your skin. It can build up your anxiety and it starts getting hard to breathe, or you feel really tired. On the other hand, if it's affecting your more mental and emotional health, you feel a loss of confidence. I don't know if I can get through this, or I don't really care if my house is painted in time or not. You lose that indifference. Or maybe you start depending on things that aren't as healthy to help with your stress. Like maybe you start using substances. That's kind of more extreme example. Or maybe it's hard to sleep at night, or you feel kind of angsty, and you're just constantly having that worry in your mind. So this is just an example of how stress, when it's building up over time, it can manifest itself in your life, in your body. Okay, and so on this next slide, we're going to talk about how we can manage our stress. So those of you who answered, and maybe anyone else who has joined the call, what are some ways that you have found is like helpful for you to manage your stress? It can be anything, something that you do for yourself whenever you feel stress coming on. Again, feel free to put in the chat, or you can unmute. Meditation, that's a really good one. Exercise, take a quick walk, exercise, relax, go for a hike. I like that.
I'm with the exercise.
Yeah. Yoga, eating well,
Oh,
pray,
pray. Yeah.
running. These are all really good. Take a deep breath.
Woosah.
Yes, all of these, we can see it helps us to just take a moment to step back from that thing that is causing us stress and just be grounded. Meditation, settle back to where we feel more calm, taking a deep breath. We're going to talk later about how to breathe, because sometimes we're just breathing and it's not very effective. So we're going to talk about how to breathe correctly. Meditation, we'll talk about that too. Exercise is really great, but it's important to find an exercise that you like, because if it just feels like a task, it's going to add on to your stress. So if you enjoy hiking, hiking is great because it gets your blood flowing, it gets your body moving, and you're enjoying it. It's taking your mind off of that thing that's causing you stress. If you like running, that's great too. That's what I like to do. Whenever I feel really stressed with school, I just go for a run, and I love it because I can just put my music in, and all I'm thinking is about the next mile I have to finish. I'm listening to my music that I love, and I'm not even thinking about the thing that was stressing me out before. And after my run, I just feel a lot better and able to take that task on more efficiently. So that's the main idea for stress management, guys. It's that you want to unplug from that thing that is causing you stress and recharge. So find an outlet that allows you to not think about whatever that is. That if it's your kids coming back, you're going to be able to manage and prepare for that if you're taking time for yourself and not worrying about that constantly. We can see some of the pictures on this slide are things that we have mentioned. It's running, exercise, getting enough sleep is very important, because if we're always running 100%, but our battery is 10%, we're not going to be able to do all those things that are on our to-do list or that we have to do. And if we do them, we're not going to do them very well. Another thing like a crossword puzzle or Sudoku or a board game is something simple. You can take a couple minutes, but you have to focus your attention on that one thing, so you're not worried about that thing that's causing you stress. And then this other picture, you can talk to a friend or a family member and just let it out, just vent. But an important thing is about being strategic about who you're talking to, because if you're talking to someone who's stressed about the same thing, for example, it's your kids coming home, if you're talking to your partner or your spouse about it and they're also stressed, you're just going to feed off of each other and you're going to build it up. And so you need to talk to someone who can just listen to you and give you good advice so that you're not so stressed out about that thing and feel better after that conversation, right? So just be mindful about who you're talking to. Can everyone hear me still good? Okay. Okay. All right. And also, just like someone else said, eating well, hydrating, all of these healthy habits are going to contribute to you being at your best so that you can manage that stress well and just feeling good and not going down that rabbit hole where you're going to lead to burnout after this stress building up. And that's just a continuum that we're going to keep talking about and expanding on. So on this next slide, we are going to now lead.
Hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me at all. I can't hear anything.
We can hear you.
I can't hear. Just, I'll make you the co-host. Keep going.
Okay. I'm gonna put in the chat then. Can you advance the slide? Do you want to go ahead and talk? We're just gonna talk about what burnout is now.
Okay, on this next slide, when it does come up, it's going to talk about burnout and what burnout actually is. So I have a question for all of you. If you can just place it in the chat or you can unmute. If you can answer, have you ever felt burnout? Have you ever felt like I'm waking up every day and it's a horrible day? Every day is just bad. Maybe you feel exhausted all the time. Maybe you feel like, say for me, my clothes, I may wash my clothes on Monday and they may not get folded till the next Monday, but they may not get put up to the next Friday type thing. I feel like everything that I'm doing is a waste of my time. Okay. So we're pretty much in agreement on that. I'd like to differentiate in between what stress comes across as and what burnout comes across as. So if I'm stressed out, I'm a little overactive. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to run around and do this. I'm stressed out. I'm trying to figure out how can I get to work on time, but I also have to drop my kids off. Oh, and I have to get breakfast. Oh, I left my lunch on the desk or at the table at the house. I have to run back. But burnout, I'm just here. I may be in a depressive, exhaustive state. Oh, I left my lunch. Well, I may swallow saliva today, and then when I get home, I'll eat. I'm not worried about it as much. It's there, but what am I going to do about it? Okay. Or how stress may lead to physical ailments, or how it may lead to having anxiety. I know when I take my test, I get so anxious and so stressed out. And I'm like, I know this material, but I'm stressed. My anxiety is just beyond measures. However, in burnout, I'm like, yeah, I'm emotional, but I'm a little detached. So, for instance, if you all have partners, when you go home, coming from work or even coming from the grocery store, and your partner's like, hey, talk to me about your day. Like, how did it go? Or what do you want to eat for dinner? And you're just like, yeah, let's eat a burger or let's eat some soup, And depression doesn't always come across as like I'm in a mellow state. You can be depressed and continues to go about your day regularly and not even notice. And then one day you're sitting there and tears are just falling down your face. I'm like, okay, why am I crying? What's really going on? But all of these things that I'm talking about, we're gonna dive deeper into through the progression of the PowerPoint. But on the slide, it just gives you a variation of things that may have come up in your life, like high cholesterol. I have high cholesterol. I found out last year. And my PCP told me, well, you get it from your family. It's hereditary. But then when I went to my family, they're like, I didn't give that to you. I did not get that to you, you know? But all these other elements that come up from stress and then leading to burnout, not figuring out a way on how to relieve some of that is going to cause some of the things that we're going to talk about. So if we'll go to the next slide, there's going to be a video and we're going to have to go to YouTube to watch it.
I can't believe it worked. Doing this once a day helped me sink from 205 to 126. I'll never forget the
Exhausted at just the thought of watching this report? Need an early night? Or could it be burnout? This state of physical or emotional fatigue preys on workers under intense and permanent stress. As their job gradually invades their home and social life, their mental state is also affected. The warning signs include insomnia, chronic fatigue, irritability, migraines, back problems, memory loss, depression, anxiety, or panic attacks. Alleviating symptoms using alcohol, tobacco, sleeping tablets, or tranquilizers can lead to addiction. Once mostly linked to jobs involving a high degree of people work, like teaching or medicine, burnout can now occur in almost any profession. Screaming at colleagues and throwing your computer out the window may be therapeutic, but it's better to stop work and see a doctor. Health professionals also advise defining personal limits and priorities, sharing workloads and talking to colleagues, and taking time off before you reach burnout.
So that's just a small snippet.
Hello, brains. Are you burned out? Have you been burned out? I feel like I'm burning out. Am I burned out? What is burnout?
That's just a small snippet of what you may feel like at work, whether you're a doctor, whether or not you're a desk clerk or librarian, or whether or not you work at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell. But hopefully that gives a little bit of insight on the beginning of this PowerPoint, and let's move on to the next.
Burnout and compassion fatigue are often confused with each other. They're often thought to be the same thing. And people will say, well, compassion fatigue is just a bad case of burnout, but they're not the same. And the reason that I wanted to address it today is if you leave burnout unattended, if you don't pay attention to it, it can lead to compassion fatigue, which is actually much worse. Now, let's look at the comparison. Burnout, it builds over time. It brings symptoms of emotional and physical exhaustion. You feel overwhelmed, powerless, low to no motivation. I know when I'm burned out, there is no motivation to be found anywhere. And there's a disconnection from other people. And other people could be your coworkers, it could be your partners, your kids, your friends. But this general disconnect, you just don't have the energy to be around other people. And burnout actually can push you beyond your limits of caring about the fact that you're disconnected with people, and you're caring about the fact that you don't care. So that's when burnout can actually move into compassion fatigue. Now, compassion fatigue can begin very quickly in that initial contact with someone, a patient, a student. It could be your friend for that matter, but it can start in that initial contact, depending on the content of that contact, or it can build over time. And it results from the combination of exhaustion and trauma. Burnout is the exhaustion, but if you add trauma to that, the secondary traumatic stress, then that's the compassion fatigue piece, that combination. It also causes a disconnection from others, but as well as your work. So you're disconnected from other people, but you're also disconnected from your work. You don't care if your chores get done or not. You don't care if your tasks or projects get done or not. Who cares? You don't have the energy or the motivation to actually do it, and you don't care. The thing about compassion fatigue too is it gets progressively worse. There are actually 5 stages to compassion fatigue. That's a whole separate presentation by itself, but there's 5 stages and each one is worse than the one before. It ends with you being a patient, either in a medical facility, a psychological facility, but lots and lots of symptoms, physical and psychological symptoms, if you don't address it. Okay, now just as a side note, the trauma that I mentioned, that when it's coupled with exhaustion, that defines compassion fatigue. That trauma, it could be your own trauma that you haven't dealt with. It can also be secondary traumatic stress that is the result of listening to the stories or witnessing even the trauma of other people. If you work, you work with students, you work with patients, you're going to hear some things, you're going to see some things. And some of those things are, they're not going to affect you. Some of those things are going to be heartbreaking. Some of them are going to make you mad. Some of them, it could be a little bit of both. It's heartbreaking, but it makes you mad. And you just don't know what to do with it. You need to find somebody and talk to them and debrief. Otherwise, that's where the compassion fatigue can come in. Okay. The takeaway here from this slide is that burnout can lead to compassion fatigue if you don't address it. And just remember, you can't help other people if you're not okay yourself.
Okay, so then we're going to move on to illustrate the burnout spectrum with this visual here. You can see that the engagement part is on the left, and this is where things are going pretty well. You have minimal exhaustion. You don't feel cynical about your role in the workplace. You feel like you have strong professional efficacy. So like you're able to do the things that people are asking you to do. You feel like you have a good grasp on your responsibilities, on how to achieve them, on how to manage your stress, and you have a pretty good attitude about being at work, and maybe even you feel like work is exciting for you, and so you feel really engaged and you feel motivated, and things are going really well, right? This is the dream. This is what we all hope, is to feel really engaged in our work. And then there are various things that can happen that can lead to burnout, or that are symbols of one of these different elements being a little bit more difficult during the work environment. So the first part, when you feel disengaged, is when you have an example of heightened cynicism. So maybe you feel like you have professional efficacy, maybe you don't feel super exhausted, but you do feel really cynical about the environment. Maybe you feel that your supervisor doesn't understand you, or your coworkers undermine you, or you're not feeling supported in some way. And so it makes you feel cynical about the workplace for some reason. This can result in feelings of disengagement. And so over time, feelings of disengagement might trickle into some of these other feelings of exhaustion or professional efficacy that can lead to burnout. When you feel ineffective, it's mostly that you have a reduced professional efficacy. So maybe you're not cynical, maybe you're not exhausted, but you just feel like, gosh, this is overwhelming and I don't feel like I can do these responsibilities. Like people are asking me to do something that I don't feel comfortable with, or I haven't learned this yet, or this isn't part of my job responsibility. And so of course that can happen, where we might feel like we're not prepared to engage in some conversations or do some different tasks. And we're just kind of being thrown into them. So that can lead to feeling ineffective. And then another example is when you have exhaustion only, and this is when you're really overextended. So this is not necessarily, you don't feel cynical, or you might not have reduced professional efficacy. It's more just like they're asking me to do too much. Like I'm working too hard, I'm not being appreciated, and I'm really overextended. I have too many responsibilities. So we can feel what each of these things individually when we feel disengaged or ineffective or overextended. And then when we feel the combination of these things, it's indicative of burnout. So when we feel like we are disengaged because we're cynical about the circumstances in our work environment, or when we feel that we are ineffective and we're overextended, then we are really having a hard time in the workplace coming up with ways that make us feel more productive in the work environment and make us feel appreciated in the work environment and make us feel like we are engaged and like we are succeeding in the work environment. So any of these things on their own is problematic, but especially when more than one of them is combined with each other, then it's really indicative of feeling burnout and feeling stress and having some of these negative coping mechanisms that we've already talked about previously. So there are a variety of different ways to assess burnout. A lot of you guys, if you registered before Friday afternoon, I already sent out these links to you. If you registered today, then I didn't get them to you before the presentation, but based on the list I had on Friday afternoon, I sent out an example of the burnout assessment tool and the burnout symptoms assessment so that you could see what some of these what some of the burnout symptoms might look like. And I can show them to you right now as well. So for burnout symptoms, it's measuring exhaustion and mental distance and cognitive impairment and emotional impairment. I don't really feel like I can get all of them on the screen, but most of them on the screen here. So you can see what these things look like, and you can indicate whether or not you have them. And so if you were over here on the left, this would be a low score, like I don't feel mentally exhausted. If you were over here on the right, this would be a higher score, like I do strongly agree that I feel mentally exhausted. Things at work are taking a great deal of effort. I find it hard to recover my energy. As some of you guys talked about, feeling tired and having trouble getting up in the morning or lacking energy. So these are all things that are indicative of feeling exhaustion in the workplace. So that would measure that level of burnout. Mental distance. And so this maybe reflects a little bit more of like the cynicism, where you don't feel enthusiastic about your work. You don't feel like you don't think much about what you're doing. You're kind of on autopilot. You have an aversion towards your job or feel indifferent. And then here feeling cynical about what your job means. Here is where you're having trouble staying focused or thinking clearly. This might be indicative of some overwhelm that you feel and feeling overburdened. And the same thing here when it comes to how you feel unable to control your emotions or recognize yourself, become irritable. So if you noticed yourself checking off boxes over here more on like you strongly agree with the statements that are presented on the table, you might have a little bit more of some of these symptoms of burnout versus if you were over here saying, no, I don't really think that I have those things. Obviously, that's a much better place to be, and you're probably much more engaged in the workplace. And this is the other table, which looks at some of the secondary symptoms that people might have, which is trouble or falling or staying asleep or worrying, feeling tense and stressed, feeling anxious. And then physical symptoms like headaches, like Tyler was mentioning in her slide, and Mariana, where you're talking about muscle pain and stomach and palpitations and all these things that can happen. So these are other types of things that might be secondary to the stress that you feel at work. And so I don't know if you are like that. For me, if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I do a lot because I have 2 small children, as soon as I'm awake, my brain just starts going, like the wheel starts turning, and I have a really hard time falling back asleep because all of a sudden my to-do list like appears in my head. And so if you're like that is, you have sometimes a difficult time centering and getting yourself back to a place of calm so that you can go back and get your rejuvenation and sleep. And so that can be an example of how burnout manifests in your life. So some of you mentioned that when you are feeling stressed, you meditate. And I wanted to share a couple of resources with you. On our benefits page on the HR page, we have a link to this ComPsych guidance resources, which basically is like the Bobcat Balance information that's on there. So if you go to Bobcat Balance and you go to guidance resources, then it'll take you to ComPsych, and you can register for that. And it has all different types of things to help you in terms of resources. And there's wellness things, relationships, work and education, financial, legal. Some of our stressors are financial and legal, right? And so we have these resources on here too. And then for wellness topics, you can read about a variety of different things. And they have some articles about meditation and how to engage in meditation. And so if you go to this page, this is just a screenshot, but you can read through all of these different things on there, and you can find links also for counseling if you feel like counseling is something that would be helpful to you. So this is one resource that's available to us through Bobcat Balance and on the website once you register for ComPsych. And then another slide here is just some examples of like, this is what the ComPsych page offers. There's on-demand trainings, and you can get information about counseling. You can search for attorneys, or if you have childcare, or a lot of us have stress because we're caregivers for parents or spouses or siblings or something. So there's also other types of caregiving resources. So all of these different things are available to you on the page, and it gives you really helpful tools to try to balance some of these other stressors that we might feel. And then, of course, you guys know about WellCats because you're here. And so this is the link to the WellCats page that's on the slide. There are fitness classes and stretch sessions, so you can sign up for those types of things. And Tyler's going to tell you guys a little bit more about that in a minute. And then there's also a department event request. So if you feel like you're in a department where everybody's feeling burned out, or where everybody is feeling like they need some energy back in the workplace, you can put in a department event request, and WellCats can come to your department and they can give a presentation to your department. You can also maybe coordinate an event for your department, like maybe a meditation session or a cooking class or things like that, that you feel like might be beneficial. So you would click on a request of well-being event, and that's available to you. Another thing that you guys mentioned is exercise and walking. And so besides the fitness classes, we also have a map on the WellCats page of walking trails. And this is for the San Marcos campus, but I'm pretty sure that it's in the works for the Round Rock campus as well. But you could like look at the map and look at the information where it tells you how long the route is, what the ascent is. So you get a sense of like how hard you'll be working, especially on the campus with all the hills. That's useful information. Figure out, is this a hilly trail or a flat trail? So there's different routes that you might consider walking on campus, and you can get a measure of how far you'll be walking and what your goals might be for that. So there are a lot of resources that we try to make available to you at the university, both in terms of the Bobcat Balance stuff, as well as in terms of wellness stuff through WellCats. So I hope that some of that is useful for you. And then we'll focus a little bit more on meditation here.
Okay, I'm back. So for the most part, if you've heard about meditation, you've heard that, oh, it'll reduce my stress, it'll reduce my anxiety. Let me just go, sit down and maybe close my eyes for a little bit. And that may be a cynical way of thinking about it. And if you've ever done meditation, you'd be like, no, it's actually, pretty decent and it's awesome to do. It can also help with cognitive function. It can also help with healthier sleeping patterns. I know I don't go to sleep till like the morning, and then I wake up in the morning. So I may need to do more of it. But it can also enhance your mood. I had a friend of mine that actually told me to watch a video, and he said, just take 15 minutes and watch the video and then tell me how you feel afterwards. And I indulged him and I went ahead and did it, and I felt great. So there's a hyperlink to this word, and we're going to go ahead and click on it to watch a little video. If you're in your office or if you're in an area where you can turn your lights off, definitely do that. And just try to relax and listen to what the gentleman is trying to say.
I think the video's muted.
An easy way to think the mind is often quite different to how people imagine it to be. Maybe they have an idea it's about stopping thoughts or eliminating feelings, but the reality is a bit different. An easy way to think of it is to imagine yourself sitting on the side of a busy road, the passing cars representing the thoughts and the feelings. All you have to do is to sit there and watch the cars. Sounds easy, right? But what usually happens is that we feel a bit unsettled by the movement of the traffic. So we run out into the road and try and stop the cars, or maybe even chase after a few, forgetting that the idea was to just sit here. And of course, all of this running around only adds to the feeling of restlessness in the mind. So training the mind is about changing our relationship with the passing thoughts and feelings, learning how to view them with a little more perspective. And when we do this, we naturally find a place of calm. Will we sometimes forget the idea of the exercise and become distracted? Of course we will. But as soon as we remember, here we are, back on the side of the road again, just watching the traffic go by, perfectly at ease in both body and mind.
Okay, so that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but everyone should have the PowerPoint. And in the
Hi.
notes section.
Over the next 10 sessions, I'm going to show you a really simple way of getting some more headspace in your life. Don't worry if you've never done anything like this before. This is a really straightforward technique, and I'm going to talk you through every step of the way.
There's a link in the notes section, and on Netflix, there's a series called Headspace. They also have it on YouTube as well. If you do not have Netflix, you don't have to subscribe. If you'll take a second throughout your day, or maybe when you go home sometime and say, hey, let me give it a try, watch the first episode or two and see how you feel and see if that's even beneficial to you. It's something that I do quite frequently, maybe every week or so, or every other week, just when I feel overwhelming feelings. I'll probably feel those feelings in about a week when finals come up. So if that's to any interest of you, I'd advise you just try it and see if you like it.
Thanks for that. I like that video. That's a good reminder. Part of meditation too is learning to breathe. And obviously, you know, the slide, when it comes back, there it is. It's about learning to breathe correctly. Now, obviously, you're breathing, right? You're upright, you're conscious, you're breathing. But the question is, are you breathing correctly? Now, breathing correctly means breathing into the diaphragm. Now, we're born breathing that way, but life happens and stress builds and we forget, right? In times of stress and anxiety and burnout, it goes with it. Most of us tend to take those real shallow breaths. We breathe like in the chest only, or maybe we even hold our breath. And then we wonder why we're so out of breath. It's like, wait a minute, I've been holding my breath. Okay, so let me take some quick deep breaths and catch up. But if you're holding your breath or you're only breathing very shallow, just into your chest, this tells the body that there's a threat and that we need to be on alert. We go into fight or flight. So what that means is the body functions are focused on protecting us. For example, objective thinking stops, appetite is suppressed, blood flow changes, and there's some other things that happen when we're in fight or flight, because again, the focus is on protecting us. The body is expecting us to either run or fight. So it's preparing us for that. Now, breathing correctly, though, can bring us out of fight or flight and help the body return to just a state of balance. If you're breathing correctly, it tells the body there's no threat and you can think objectively again. Whereas if you're only breathing very shallow and you're in fight or flight, your thinking becomes very hyper focused on one thing, again, looking for the threat. So we need to learn how to breathe correctly and just check in with ourselves throughout the day to make sure that we're actually doing that. Okay. What correct breathing is not. Most people get confused with this if they haven't done any correct breathing, any meditation, they haven't gone for any walks, no exercise or anything for a while. They forget what correct breathing actually is. So a lot of people will take that forced deep breath. Okay, am I doing it now? No, you're not. You're not. It's not a forced deep breath. It's also not taking a breath through your nose and then gasping for a breath through your mouth to make your abdominal area expand. I've worked with people that do this and they go, okay, wait, yeah, that's it. No, it's not. It's not. But if you haven't done it for a while, you don't remember how. So sometimes we have to retrain our bodies to breathe right. Okay, so that's what it's not. So the next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this breathing activity. And I know a lot of you've got your cameras off. That's totally fine. Don't need anything. I just want you to check in with yourself. First of all, just make sure that you're fairly comfortable and make sure that your shoulders are down. Because another thing, when we get stressed and we're burned out, we tend to bring our shoulders up. Okay, they come up and they're like attached to your ears. That's not going to help you. Again, that's tension, and it's telling your body, uh-oh, something's up and I need to be on high alert, but you don't. So make sure your shoulders are down. You can reach for the floor if you have to, just to bring your shoulders down. You want to place your hands on your abdominal area. Just rest them, like cross them over like this, and just rest them on your abdominal area. And then take a breath. Not a gasp, not a deep breath, just breathe. When you do that, is your abdominal area expanding and contracting with each breath? If you're breathing correctly, it should be. If you're breathing shallow, only your chest will rise and fall with each breath. Just take a few breaths. Make sure your shoulders are down. Nobody's around. Nobody's going to see you. Check in with yourself and make sure that you're breathing right. It used to be a thing when I was growing up about holding your stomach in. Don't hold your stomach in. You want to look thin. This is not the time for that. If that's a thing, that is not the time for that. Don't worry about it. You're in the privacy of your own office or home, and just breathe. Is anybody, you can unmute and talk about it. You can put it in the chat. Is anybody having any trouble with this? Are you finding it easy to breathe this way? If you're breathing correctly, from your neck all the way to where your legs hook on, should be expanding and contracting with each breath. Struggling to feel like you're getting a good deep breath? Yeah. It doesn't have to be a full deep breath. Just breathe. Just normal breathing. Don't count your breaths. Don't focus on listening to yourself. Breathe. Just put your hands on your abdominal area. Yeah. If you're playing a wind instrument, you're singing, you're screaming, it's that breathing. Yes, exactly. A lot of times, depending on, meditation video or book or, whatever, if you're at a class even, they'll say count your breaths, hold your breaths for a certain amount of time. You don't need to do that. To breathe correctly, you don't need to do any of that. That overcomplicates it. If you're already stressed and you're like, okay, wait, let me breathe correctly now. Okay, wait, was it in through the nose and out through the mouth? How many breaths was that? Wait, what? your stress just went up. So you don't want to do any of that. You don't want to overcomplicate. Just breathe. Just if you have a window in your office or if you're at home and you're near a window, just stare out the window. Watch what's going on. Just breathe. You don't have to take that deep breath. Just breathe. How do you feel? And somebody said it feels nice.
Very calming.
Yeah, when you're breathing correctly, it shifts which nervous system is in charge. Yeah, go ahead and yawn. Absolutely. Go ahead. It can absolutely do that. It relaxes your body. It reminds your body and your mind that you are okay, that it's safe, that you are safe, that you can relax. You don't have to be on guard. You don't have to be on high alert. Your body can do what it's meant to do, and everything works the way it's intended to work. It's breathing correctly. And now anytime you start to feel stressed, you start to feel a little burnout creeping in, check in with yourself and check in with your breathing. And nobody will know. You could be in a meeting, you could be in class like this, you could be anywhere. And just that mental, okay, wait, let me check in. How am I breathing? And just, anywhere, standing in the grocery line, put your hands across your abdominal area. People aren't going to pay any attention to that. And just check in with yourself. If you're not breathing correctly, it's easy enough to fix. Okay, wait, I'm breathing very shallow. Let me get back to breathing all the way down into the diaphragm. And you switch your body out of fight or flight. So there's a little something that you can do just anytime during your day. You can do it in the middle of the night if you wake up. Trisha, I have the same thing. I wake up in the middle of the night and I've got dogs. I don't have little kids, but I've got dogs. I don't know if it's better or worse, but I'll wake up and the to-do list starts going. But when I start breathing, if I focus on my breathing, I can bring myself out of that. It kind of puts the brakes on that mental chatter that goes on. And then I can go back to sleep.
All right, everybody, we are down to the end of our presentation. We took up so much of your time. Just kidding. We loved having y'all. Hopefully y'all loved having us too. This video is basically going to rope back everything that we've discussed. And then we'll have a question or two, and then I'll talk about the All right, everybody. I hope that y'all enjoyed that animation. It may be a little drastic, sending her to the hospital and such, but I've been in such predicament where stress has gotten to me where I had to go to the doctor for it. So it can definitely happen. But I hope that this presentation gave y'all a little bit of insight or some tips on how to manage your stress to not lead to burnout. And we do have our wellness stretch sessions every Monday and Wednesday at 3:15 to 3:30. And then on Wednesdays on the Round Rock campus, we have the strength stretch, no sweat. We may sweat just a little bit, just a little bit, but we can do yoga, we can do HIIT workouts, we can do whatever you like. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have the walks, and those are for 30 minutes. Can we put in a request for more stretch days? Yes.
And y'all have the recordings too, don't leave them whenever.
Absolutely. So this afternoon, I look forward to seeing all of you at 3:15, and come with some ailments so we can do some wrist or some hammies.
Any questions?
Y'all are very welcome.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank y'all for coming.
Here's the events page, just in case you guys needed to know where that is. And you can find all the stuff up here. And here's the link to the afternoon stretch break. You can even add them to your calendar, or like they said, that's on the Wellcats Teams channel. You can log on and look at their recorded ones and do the stretches anytime. Yeah, we should maybe have you do a breathing one. We can watch the breathing one anytime.
Yep.
That was so good.
Good. I'm glad everybody enjoyed it. I'm glad you all were here.
Yeah, thank you. And if you guys have any questions, please let us know. And if you want to send an email, you're always welcome to do that as well. So I'm going to stop the recording, and